Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Adams. I'm the Executive Director of Women's Empowerment International, and I'm so happy to welcome you here today for this presentation on two of our recent international site visits led by board and volunteer teams. So they are going to be giving their presentations about each of the visits one after another. So first we will hear from the group who went to visit OEF de El Salvador. And then next we will hear from the group that went to Adelante in Honduras. So in between each of those and after those, we will have the Q&A sessions for each of them. So as they're going through and presenting, you can hold your questions. As soon as they wrap up the main part of their presentation, we'll open it up for Q&A, and then we'll go to the next group. So I will start sharing some slides and turn the presentation over to the first team for the OEF site visit presentation.
All right, so I think I will get it started while Sarah gets our presentation on. So thank you, everyone, and welcome to this presentation. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce the folks that went on the site visit, and you can see most of us here on that top picture. So Rosette, Nancy, Larry, Debbie, Mark, Susan, Stephanie, and myself, Jose Angel. And actually, Stephanie's not in the picture. But let me begin. First, we have a video. So, Sarah, if you could get that going. This is how we're going to organize our El Salvador presentation, by the way.
Come with me on a sneak peek to Women's Empowerment International site visit to San Vicente, El Salvador, hosted by our partner OEF. We got to meet and chat with a few women entrepreneurs that are recipients of the loans funded by OEF. This is Araceli and her son Camilo. She received a loan to grow her undergarment and clothes selling business from her home. Here's Liliana making her delicious tortillas, which she sells around the neighborhood. Yes, we got to try them. There's nothing like handmade tortillas. We also had the chance to visit a school that offers special tutoring through OEF for those students that need extra assistance. These students greeted us with a beautiful song. Here they are playing their guitars. Here's another woman entrepreneur, Ana Gabriela. She sells fresh shaved ice treats and other snacks. Here she is making my lime treat. It was refreshing. We also got to visit another school built for OEF, where we met with a group that shared the stories of how OEF has supported them in different ways, from loan programs and business workshops to health-related support. Here we are at the home of another woman entrepreneur. This is Dolores. She used her loan to purchase two kinds of chickens, ones to sell and ones that produce eggs for her to sell. We also visited an OEF business development office where people of all ages go for business workshops, trainings, and development for a diverse range of industries. Overall, it was a successful OEF site visit, and Women's Empowerment International is proud to be their partner.
All right, thank you, Sarah. I love that video, by the way. Thank you, Stephanie, for putting that together. So let me begin with some general information on the country, just for context on politics and a little bit of economics. So just briefly, El Salvador is the smallest country in Latin America. Its economy is diversified with some industry and services, but it's mostly agricultural. We saw lots of sugarcane being transported on the highway. Its economy uses the US dollar as its currency, and its current president is Nayib Bukele, who you may have read about recently. He is on his second term, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of his policies. Next slide, please. So, El Salvador has faced many challenges over the past several decades. Natural disasters, including earthquakes and hurricanes, have caused a lot of damage. But what has really marked the country's recent history has been the persistent civil strife. A civil war in the 80s between the right-wing government and left-wing guerrillas caused about 1 in 6 Salvadorans to leave the country, most often to the U.S. Later in the 90s, the U.S. government began deporting gang members from the MS-13 and other gangs to El Salvador. And just as an aside, these gangs were actually born in Los Angeles. What these gang members found upon arriving in El Salvador was a weak government, corrupt police, and lots of leftover weapons from the Civil War. And this was all fertile ground for expansion. They expanded into drug and people smuggling, extortion, forced recruitment of kids and teenagers. Everyday people and small businesses like those that we support were victimized. Many more people fled the country. Next slide, please. So violence caused by gangs grew so bad that by 2012, El Salvador had the highest murder rate in the world. In 2019, Nayib Bukele campaigned for president on a tough on crime platform, and he won. Despite his initial efforts, by 2022, murders had gotten so bad that he declared a state of emergency. So essentially, this state of emergency granted the police, special powers to arrest and throw people in jail, often without any due process. So the state of emergency has been extended over 30 times, and it continues to this day. Through these actions, by 2024, the murder rate had dropped by 98% from what it had been in 2015, making El Salvador one of the safest nations in Latin America. But this success came with a cost. Innocent people have been swept up, and many never having seen a judge. The jail population has grown 3 times, often in very overcrowded and sometimes in underground conditions. Today, El Salvador has the highest incarceration rate in the world. In 2024, presidential elections were held, and despite all this, or perhaps because of it, President Bukele won a second term with about 85% support. So what did we experience on our site visit? What did we see? So, the country appears to be making progress. When you arrive, there's a modern airport, there's 4-lane highways between the major cities. It appears clean and orderly. It also feels safe. You don't see armed guards, outside, gas stations or restaurants like you do in other countries. When we would go out at night, we saw the streets, they were well lit, people strolling in the plaza, crowded restaurants. It just felt safe. However, people are afraid to talk freely. They would kind of look over their shoulder to make sure that nobody was listening to what they were saying. Many innocent people have been jailed due to anonymous calls or just looking suspicious, whatever that might be. We were told that families have to pay $150 every 6 weeks to have their relatives that are in jail fed. It also appears that government efforts have really not focused on the poor or to combat sexual violence against women. We saw very marginalized communities, very poor schools with lack of opportunity and lack of services. Something that was striking was the number of women we heard about that had been subjected to sexual violence or sexual pressure early in relationships, like there was some sort of an expectation that they have to get pregnant, right away. Absence of father figures at homes was also striking. 3 generations of families living together was common, but you didn't see too many men around. So just to conclude my part here, poverty, inequality, and sexual violence remain. However, the increased security would appear to make it possible for conditions to improve. So with that, let me turn it over to Susan to talk about OEF and what they're doing about these opportunities and challenges.
Thank you, Jose. Well, let me start by introducing OEF. It was founded in 1985 and originally operated in 6 countries. Today, El Salvador is the only country where OEF continues to operate, which is proof of a long-lasting impact and relevance of their programs there. OEF is deeply committed to transforming lives by focusing on education, employability, and preventive health, empowering especially women and children in vulnerable communities. OEF's strength also lies in its leadership. The organization is currently led by Dr. Denora Sanchez, whose mother, Emma Denora Mendez, was part of OEF from the very beginning. That continuity has helped keep the mission strong. Another pillar of support has been their honorary president, Ildiko Tisak, and her late husband, Pablo, longtime champions and benefactors of the organization. Next slide. OEF truly cares about its local communities. They believe education is essential to empowerment. OEF runs sessions that focus on human rights, gender equity, and women's empowerment. Community assemblies are a key part of their program where hundreds of families, many led by women, gather to identify and prioritize local issues. This process builds leadership, encourages collaboration, and strengthens community voice. There are also workshops on nutrition and preventive health, helping families establish vegetable gardens, support food security and wellness. Families also participate in sanitation campaigns to reduce the transmission of diseases. And on the health side, OEF partners with clinics to offer seminars on breast and cervical cancer and help women access important services like Pap smears. And in one city, Sonzacate, a tree planting initiative brought together community members and stakeholders. They planted over 60 trees as a sign of their shared commitment to a healthier environment. These programs go beyond the classroom. They make a tangible difference in daily lives of these women and build resilience in the community. Next slide. In 2022, OEF became a pilot partner of WE, starting a new chapter of impact. The initial goal was to empower 40 women across rural communities with access to microloans. In the first year, 56 loans, ranging from $200 to $500, were dispersed. This successful start led to a full partnership in 2024, backed by another $20,000 grant. Today, 67 women entrepreneurs, some of them from the original 40 women, have active loans and growing businesses. Next slide. OEF doesn't just hand out loans. They provide comprehensive support. Along with their finance partner, Credit Mana, they provide financial training, business planning, and accounting basics. Women are also taught customer service skills and even how to market their products on social media. And just as important, counseling is a key factor in building confidence, personal growth, and strong social skills, rounding out their path to empowerment. Next slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Debbie.
Thank you, Susan. Well, of course, the heart of a site visit is meeting and visiting with and talking to some of the women who have benefited from the WE grant with loans. So I'm going to tell you about the women that we visited. First of all, we met Carla. Carla is 25 years old and has a 5-year-old son. She sells products from her home, including pupusas that she makes in the evening. Pupusa is like a national food dish of El Salvador. She has a grant, a loan of $200 from 2 years ago, and she promotes her business on Facebook. She dreams of operating a supermarket. We were impressed by her enthusiasm and her ability to speak about her business. She pays her loan back at $31.50 a month, and she started with OEF as a member of the family community that Susan was talking about. Next slide. We met Ileana. I think Ileana was the oldest of the women that we met with. She has 3 grown children, and she has a husband who is in the United States and occasionally sends money to support the family. Her business is making and selling tortillas. With a $200 loan, she also expanded the business to sell fruits and snacks. She makes her tortillas every day from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. But what impressed me was she starts her day in the morning at 6 a.m. with ears of corn, which she cleans and processes and mills to make the corn flour that she uses to make her tortillas. Next slide. Grecia is the last of the 6 women we met, and I think perhaps the most remarkable woman. Grecia supports her husband and 2 sons. All 4 of them are blind, and the 2 sons have significant developmental disabilities. She works as a massage therapist from her home. She's had 4 loans, and she uses the loan money to buy equipment and supplies to support her massage business. She's also in school to get chiropractic training, and her goal is to own her own home. Her persistence, in spite of the obstacles that life has thrown at her, is remarkable. I have to also mention that she's a musician. She plays the guitar, and I don't know if you noticed in the little video at the very end, there was a teenager playing the guitar. Grecia taught that young girl how to play the guitar. She has to find a new home. One of the issues we learned about, because of deportations and anticipated deportations in the United States, there are a lot of El Salvadorans who are planning to move back to El Salvador. So they may own a house in El Salvador that they're renting out to someone like Grecia and her family. So she had gotten news that the family was going to move back from the United States and they are going to have to find a new home. I think she had an appointment after we met her to go look at a home, which didn't pan out. So she was still looking when we left. Next slide. Here are the other three ladies that we met. Dolores in the middle with the yellow t-shirt buys chicks for egg production and to sell some as roasters. It takes 4 months for the chicks to grow enough to start producing eggs. She's had 3 loans and she's 34 years old. She was very enthusiastic about her chicken raising business. Anna, on the left, sells juices, ices, and snacks. She used her WE loan to build an attractive covering for her business space, which was previously just out in the blazing sun. She's able to work from home and support her young daughter. Her second loan from WE will be paid back in May. And then finally, there's Araceli over on the right with her young son. She's 24 years old, and she was trying to deal with the sad fact that her husband had recently left her. So she is reliant on her business to support her family. She sells clothing, shoes, and purses from her bedroom. Interestingly, the room that we met her and talked to her was the family room or the living room of the house. But she had moved all of her product out of her bedroom into this room for our benefit. But normally she sells out of her bedroom. Araceli also uses social media and Facebook. She goes door to door to sell, and she sells by Facebook. We learned that one of the challenges that Araceli has, and probably some of the other women, is their businesses can't get too big. If they get too big, the result of government economic census would decide that she needs to pay taxes or more taxes than she's already paying. So those are the ladies we met. Next slide, please. What are the challenges and what are the successes? The challenges are many, but so are the successes. The organization is run on a shoestring. The loss of USAID money earlier in the month that we visited led to the closing of 8 communities that they supported. And the number of women that they are now able to try to support and help has decreased from 600 to 400. The demand for loans is high. It's higher than the money that they have available to make loans. And the ripple effects of deportations from the United States is just starting to be felt. The lack of formal education is a constant issue, but the training that is provided by OEF is helping these women to learn that lack of earlier education doesn't need to stand in their way. What are the successes? The organization is run by and supported by some remarkable women that Susan mentioned. The community buy-in represents a holistic approach to training and supporting women and helping them on their way to economic empowerment. They have recently asked for a renewal of their grant from Women's Empowerment, and they've asked for another $20,000 grant. Their goal is to enhance the social and economic empowerment of 400 women in 14 communities. This would provide funding for 50 new women with loans. That would be at $200 on on average. 120 women would get business counseling, 220 women would develop vocational abilities, and 400 women would participate in health and empowerment training. It's a remarkable organization, and I think we all learned so much about it on our site visit. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to let everybody look at these pictures for just a minute. There's beautiful. And stop sharing for a minute so we can see each other. And I want to open it up to questions for this first group. Does anyone have a question? Linda Weber.
Actually, I have two questions. So, what does OEF stand for?
You go back to the first slide, somebody who speaks Spanish can tell you. Sarah, you want to go to that first slide? My first slide.
Yes, give me.
Or maybe Jose can say it. I never can pronounce it.
Yeah, I need to look at that first slide.
Well,
I think it's
do we know what it means in English?
Female empowerment, I believe, is what it translates into.
Right,
Women and
about
yeah,
families.
it's female business entrepreneurial organization.
Okay, and then could you say a little more about how the withdrawal of USAID funds is affecting these communities, particularly the OEF? How is it affecting? I mean, was OEF receiving USAID funds or just other areas in the community?
I'll answer that. OEF was receiving funds, and how it affected them is that they had to lay off eight people who were their community liaisons. So in each of these, was it 21, 23 communities that they work with, they have a community liaison who usually comes from that community. And they've had to lay off 8 of them because they lost that funding.
Thank you.
Hey, Debbie and team, I had a question. You mentioned a little bit about the education level, and I was wondering, with the training that OEF provides, how are they providing that training? Is it in person? Is it online? Is it both? And sort of what education level are they targeting?
They train them in seminars. I think that one slide had pictures of different seminars, and that's mostly, they gather the women and they have charts and stuff. What was the education level was like? 6th grade was probably about.
Not many people make it to junior high.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, in the period of time that we has been a partner with OEF, here are just some examples. 260 families have participated in training on women's empowerment and conflict resolution and the parents' role in children's education. 350 families have participated in training on prioritizing community issues, developing leadership, and promoting citizen agency. Those are examples of the kinds of training that OEF is putting on. I don't think any of it is virtual.
And Karen, if I could, I just wanted to point out that what we learned, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the urban areas. So we went into San Vicente, which is a city, and that's where we spent some of our time. But then we went out into the rural areas. In the urban centers, there are schools that go through high school, and it's somewhat easier for the families to send their children to school through high school. But many of our clients and the communities that we serve, or that OEF serves, are in rural areas, and there the schools are only through 6th grade, which is what Susan was saying, or Debbie was saying. And it's the families have to be able to send their kids far away and pay for the transportation and whatever to get to a school. And so that's the government is not providing public schools, or there aren't many of them, if any, beyond 6th grade in the rural areas.
Yeah, I think what we heard is that there are schools out there, but they're few and far between, and the government is even closing down some of the ones that are out there and making them, travel even further to schools.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
I see some more hands popping up. I saw Jeanette's first. Oh, I can't hear you, Jeanette. Sorry.
You mentioned that people were a little nervous about talking about the political situation. So did you guys just completely avoid that, or did you actually manage to talk to people, and did you have impressions as to what they think of Bukele and the way things are going there?
So we did not avoid the subject, but we were mindful that we first asked it in a sort of in an oblique way to see what their openness or willingness to talk about these subjects is, just because they're sensitive. And they were willing to talk to us about them. It is challenging. They, like I said, they do look over their shoulder just to make sure that it's, they're in a safe space to be able to speak freely. There is frustration. There is recognition that safety is better, but they are also very frustrated about how it has come about to be that way.
Okay, thank you.
Ria.
Ria?
Yes, thanks. You mentioned that they've had to cut back from 600 to 400 clients because of these USAID cutbacks. And I'm trying to envision how that works in terms of the 200 clients that must have had outstanding loans. Or were they only clients that were receiving education? And if they did have outstanding loans, what happens with that?
It wasn't, they didn't have to cut back they didn't have 600 clients that they cut back to 400. They had communities that they were representing that they had to cut back, that they had community liaisons going, as part of that community. So those liaisons is what they had to cut. The loans, I believe 100% of the funding for the loans comes through and so they are, continuing on with the loans, and that part of it has not been cut back. So the loan process continues.
Thank you. And then Christy, I saw your hand.
Yeah, so two questions. Just one is a follow-up from what Susan just said. So all of their funding for loans is only coming from WE? They don't have any other source of income for their loans?
Not for their loans, but they have a lot of other programs that they have other sources of income. I mean, even the hotel we stayed in is a hotel and a kind of a conference center. They had conference rooms, and we met in there the first morning. The profit from that goes to OEF. They have organizations, I believe it was Belgium, and I think Canada, different areas that they have funders from around the world. So we are not their only funder, but right now we are the only funder of loans.
Okay. So, and then in terms of business development, do they give them any training or, let's say, ideas in terms of what types of business? I mean, one of the common things I've seen on multiple site visits is so often what they're selling is, snacks and sort of basically junk food. So I was just, a lot of these little mini groceries that they sell, run and stuff, a lot of times does not have really much very healthy food that they're selling. Do they give them other ideas and opportunities of other places where they could have a successful business?
I'll take it.
Let me comment on that.
Yeah.
I would answer it in two ways. I don't know about the consultation about more different kinds of businesses that might be healthier. I think what they're doing is filling niches that the community wants and needs. But it was clear that the executive director of the organization, who traveled with us and went to the interviews with the women that we went to, she knows these people personally. And she's advised them and maintains a relationship, which is not just, a business development, but also more of a holistic relationship that she has with these people. So I believe they're getting a lot of support from the organization, but I can't speak to whether they're being steered to healthier types of businesses.
Or other choices besides delivering food. I mean, I know that's, I like with a tortilla. I mean, I think a lot of them make their own food and those things are great. But I just didn't know if there's other options out there besides for sort of a food delivery service or things that the community might need.
Well, the first one was, she started out selling lingerie, and then, she added different clothing and things like that. I do know that they do advise them, like, if there's somebody selling snacks or food, a block away, they do get, the advisors come in and say, let's look out what else the community needs, like Debbie said, and so they make sure that they're not putting, another woman with a loan just down the street from somebody who's selling the same thing. So they do try to, they really do try to advise them and give them good business information and help make sure that their businesses are successful. And
I would also add that a number of the business we saw were selling eggs or selling fruit juices. So I would say that they were not so super unhealthy, although the snack chips were a big success.
And I did want to add, they have a business development center, which is not currently active. I think it was defunded recently, but they did offer workshops for different industries. I think there was a workshop for baking, something that was more mechanical. I forget the other workshops that were mentioned, but that's something to add there.
Cutting hair, I mean, any kind of trade, they were doing different things like that. I mean, one of the young men we met in one of the more of a community site, he had opened his own bakery and had employed 2 other people because of what he learned at that development site. So it was kind of,
He was 21, I think.
yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much to this group for sharing. I'm going to wrap up the Q&A section for this one so that we can move on to the next group, and then we'll have Q&A following the next group's presentation as well. So thank you to everybody who just presented. That was wonderful. So now moving over to the Adelante trip, I will reshare my slides and let them take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And thank you to the El Salvador crew for sharing your insights on your trip. I wish I had been able to join you for that, but I'm excited to talk about our site visit to Honduras. And I know my fellow board members, Nancy and Linda, are as well. And Sarah, if you want to pull up the agenda, we're going to go through a similar format as the last one. I'll kick things off and talk about Honduras and our partner Adelante. And then I'll turn it over to Nancy and Linda to talk about some of the women who are building businesses with our and Adelante support. And then Linda's going to wrap up with why our support matters, especially now more than ever. So if you go to the next slide, it was my first trip to Honduras. So it was a real learning journey for me. I'll mention just a few of my observations, and it can also help to set the context for our trip. But one is, relatively speaking, Honduras is a fairly small country. The population is larger than El Salvador's, but I know a lot of us are in Southern California. So if you compare it to, let's say, LA County, they have about 10 million people, both in Honduras and LA County. But of course, Honduras has a much larger land area, and just under half of the population lives in rural areas. And we visited some of those rural areas on the mainland. And I have to say, the scenery, the landscape, the soaring mountains, the green forests were just awe-inspiring. The photo at the top of this page doesn't even do it justice. It really is a beautiful country. I was really struck by that. Unfortunately, it's also a very poor country with a lot of poverty. Again, comparing it to LA County, the annual income per person in LA County is about $80,000. In Honduras, it's about $3,000 in income per person. And that's just over $8 per day per person. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor for the difference and the amount of poverty. Honduras is one of the poorest countries in Central America. And you'll see in the photos that the women we met with are living very simply. And you folks in El Salvador probably saw this as well. Metal sheeting for roofs, sometimes just tarps for coverage, dirt or plain cement floors, very basic furnishings and appliances. Many live, in flood zones and experience frequent flooding. So that was part of our experience as well. Now, Roatan, which is an island off the coast of Honduras, is very different. It turns out it's a world-class scuba diving destination. And Nancy and I got to go scuba diving there, which was amazing. So in Roatan, the economy is much more tourism-based, but they have their own problems managing the tourists coming in, all of the mainlanders coming over for job opportunities, and the infrastructure to support all those people. So the economic conditions are somewhat better on the island, but many of the residents still experience poverty and struggle to make ends meet. And we'll see some examples of those from business owners that we met on the island in a few minutes. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll just mention a few other challenges we witnessed or observed while we were there. One was, hurricanes and flooding, huge challenge, especially in the last few years. As I mentioned, some of the women business owners we met are living next to rivers. They showed us where the water level was during the storms, and the flooding it caused was very severe. Drug trafficking and gang violence are real problems. We didn't see any of that personally, thankfully, but we certainly heard about it and the impact it's had on business owners and their families and communities. And then because of the economic conditions and the gang violence, a lot of people try to migrate to the US. We visited a school while we were there as well, and the headmaster told us that several of the teenagers had dropped out of school to try to migrate and make it to the US. So, if our government, if our voters want to stem migration to the US, what better way than to empower these women entrepreneurs to better their lives economically in their communities? Which brings me to the work of our partner, Adelante. Adelante has been providing microloans, training, support to women in Honduras for over 20 years. They focus on women who have been excluded from traditional banks. So these are women who are not able to get financing through a traditional financial institution. And I was really impressed with the work Adelante is doing. They provided loans to over 4,200 women just last year. Their loans start at about $200 and grow to a few $1,000s as the women pay back the loans and grow their business. And that might not sound like much, but if you think about it with an average income of about $3,000, one thing that struck me is that a few $100s can make a huge difference. That was one of my takeaways from the trip. And then the next slide, just a little bit about our partnership with Adelante. They've been a partner of ours since 2007, so a great long-term partner. This is a photo of us meeting with their staff at their headquarters. And of course, on our site visits, we had an Adelante guide, Jody Fisher, who's in this photo, bottom right, a local Adelante staff person, and each woman's loan officer. And the loan officer had, for the most part, a very close relationship with each of the business owners. So they were not just collecting the loan, but understanding their situation, their needs, providing support beyond the loan, like you talked about, Debbie in El Salvador. And I was really touched with Adelante staff's commitment to these women's success. I mean, it really showed. So let me turn it over to Nancy now. She's going to talk about a few of the women we met and the businesses that they're managing.
Hi. So I would just want to start out and say what a wonderful experience it was to go on these 2 site visits. I do a lot of international travel, but these site visits are really touching and very meaningful. So I'll start out with our visit to Rosa, who lives in the Mediterranean port city of Tella. She lives in a low-income neighborhood with dirt streets and very simple homes like you might see in parts of Tijuana. Over the years, she has built up a thriving tortilla business, but before receiving her loan, she struggled with working in excessive heat and direct sun in front of her house. With her first loan of $200, she was able to extend her tin roof for sun protection and purchase more ingredients to expand her business. She also told us her day starts very early in the morning with grinding the dried corn to make sure that her customers receive the freshest tortillas possible. Most of her sales come from pre-orders, which shows that she has a strong relationship with her clients, a key ingredient for the success of any small business. Rosa supports not only herself, but her 2 daughters and her elderly parents. Her mother was in a wheelchair, as you can see in one of the pictures here. And she had just recently lost her lower leg due to complications from diabetes. So she really needed Rosa to help her. For a single mother with limited means, qualifying for a traditional loan in Honduras is pretty much impossible, and the interest rates are very high. So she's deeply grateful for the opportunity to grow her business and improve her working conditions. And she's looking forward to a long relationship with Adelante and getting more loans and growing her business. Next slide. Then from Tiva, we traveled by car to the much larger port city of La Ceiba, where we met Claudia. I was very surprised at the size of Claudia's clothing store compared to the very small, mostly home-based businesses that we had been visiting in both El Salvador and Honduras on this trip. She showed us some blouses that she had designed and sewed herself and was selling at her store, but she said she buys most of her inventory from catalogs. Claudia started with a small storefront many years ago with a total loan of $1,800. She eventually became self-sufficient and left the program, but 3 years ago, she came back for another loan to grow her business in this larger, busier location. Her current loan is for $1,200, which she took out in 2023. She's been using that money to buy more merchandise to expand her business as well as improve her storefront. As an amusing side note, she said her husband is now running the original store that she started, which isn't too far from this larger one. I asked Jody why they're loaning money to this woman who clearly is not working her way out of poverty. And she said that Adelante had made the decision to make some loans to women who are a lower risk than the ones just starting out, and that they were happy that Claudia has been successful and has hired 2 employees to help her in the store, providing jobs for other women in her community. Next slide. From La Ceiba, we took a ferry 40 miles over to Roatan, a beautiful coral island 37 miles long and 5 miles wide, with a population of 57,000. We landed in Coxenhole, the island's largest city, where the ferries and cruise ships dock and the international airport is located. It's also Adelante's newest loan territory. So we were able to meet with 3 very interesting women who had just recently received their first loans, but I'll just talk about Carla. Carla used her $400 loan to purchase jewelry and also supplies to make her own original designs. She set up a table just just a table, one of those with the legs fold kind of tables, right in front of a pharmacy on the main street. And she seems to be doing quite well there in that location. Her husband is able to help out with sales at the sales table while Carla's away on the mainland purchasing supplies. One lady I met on the other side of the island said, "Oh, I know who Carla is. She's always out there in front of the pharmacy every single day selling her jewelry." So I think Carla's going to do fine. Now I'm going to turn it over.
Hi, everyone. Linda Kurtz here, also a board member and fortunate enough to go to this trip to Honduras. Allow me to introduce you to Ella, the proud owner of a pulperia. A pulperia is a rural grocery or convenience store, usually in a small hut or stall. Ella works 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. in her store with her daughter helping out. This is her second year in business and her first year with Adelante. She had a different loan company when she first started her business, but the rate was much higher and there were aggressive collection tactics for payments. With Adelante, she feels supported in her business, likes her loan officer, and of course, the lower interest rate. Ella used her loan to relocate her pulperia to a better location, to increase her inventory to include fresh produce, as indicated in this photo, tortillas, and a few clothing accessories. When asked about her business goals, she confidently replied, "I see myself with a big supermarket and with all kinds of supplies." Nancy just shared with you about Claudia and her retail business growth. We can see Ella reaching similar success and hopefully someday having that big supermarket with all those supplies. Next slide, please. And this is Yvette. Yvette runs a feeder pig operation. She has grown her business over time, currently purchasing pigs at 45 days of age and reselling them after a few months, turning over an average of about 200 pigs per year. When asked what she had been able to do with her recent loans, she explained the pig pens used to flood and they were difficult to clean. Now, the pens are located on a slope just above her house and adjacent to her outside kitchen. She also indicated that the neighbor just above the pig pens graded his lot, making more runoff in the rainy season. We could only imagine all that runoff was going into this kitchen that you can see in the bottom photo. With her loans, she has built these concrete walls. You see that the pigs are enclosed in their enclosures. And she added running water and a drainage to keep them clean. And this was particularly important since the pig pens are uphill and adjacent to her home and just on the other side of the wall of this outside kitchen that you can see. I think this woman has been waiting a really long time for an upgrade to her kitchen. And we are all very impressed with the operation and how clean it was. Okay, next slide, please. Allow me to introduce you to Cristelia, who operates another pig business, this time animal husbandry. She breeds pigs, selling the piglets, but keeping one pig to grow to full weight to be sold for meat. Her whole family is involved in running the business. She's used 13 loans with Adelante to expand the operation over time, and income sometimes was used for needed home repairs. Her home is located on this river that you see on the bottom, and it floods. That whole area floods in the rainy season. Approximately 30% of Honduran children receive a secondary education, and less than 15% attend college. When I asked Cristelia what her loans have helped her with the most, she proudly said her oldest child, her daughter, will be going to college and studying business. She plans to use her education to support the family business. What I heard was an opportunity to end generational poverty. The family shared another touching story. During the COVID pandemic, when food was in short supply for their village by the river, the pig raised to be sold for meat was offered to the community, offering to us an example of community leadership and giving back. Next slide, please. Adelante's future. Partnering with Adelante, women's empowerment is accelerating positive change in Honduras. With WE funding, Adelante would like to expand their loan pool to provide 1,200 new loans, maintaining a portfolio of loans with that same impressive 96% repayment rate. Alongside that, they're launching a new financial literacy video module, implementing both in-person and online training, aiming to reach at a minimum 50% of their borrowers. And that training sets them apart from the for-profit lenders, as well as their very significantly lower interest rates. Adelante identified neighboring communities ready for loan expansion. Adelante is committed to supporting women in the most vulnerable areas, really helping them launch and grow their business, boost their incomes, and building lasting resilience. It's about economic independence and long-term empowerment. One more slide, please, Sarah. Voices from the field. Here's a collection of some of what we've heard over the years. With my loan, I bought supplies to expand my tortilla business. Now I can afford to send my daughter to school and dream of opening a small storefront. Before Adelante, I had no idea how to manage money. Now I run a successful produce stand and I'm teaching other women in my community. One more slide. And lastly, to kind of sum it up for us, why our support matters. These microloans provide women with the opportunity to grow sustainable businesses and to make basic improvements to their homes and educate their children. It gives them dignity and confidence. And these loans often allow the women to balance caregiving with income generation. As you've heard, the impact goes beyond the loan, and that many women do return for additional funding as they grow their businesses and become role models in the community. The Honduran banks that do tend to lend to poor rural communities charge very high interest rates or require collateral to guarantee the loan in order to mitigate the risk. This often puts the borrower in a predatory situation where they have the opportunity to lose everything. Adelante offers the fair, short-term, low interest rate option. And to make this point, I want to share one more story. Towards the end of our trip, Nancy and I met a woman proudly running a small souvenir shop. When we inquired about how she came to own her business, she shared how difficult it had been and that she had to refinance her loan because she was falling behind. Now, she is not an Adelante client, but she is presently paying 39% on a 12-year term loan, owing $22,000. In her words, it feels like a monkey on my back, and as I worry every month if I can make that payment. She carries that burden for only one reason, and that's to send her children to school. So this is why our support matters. It offers women a just alternative, and our support for Adelante isn't just about financing. It's about transforming lives. And I am finished with the slides. I think now is when we open it up to questions.
Thank you so much. Who has a question for this group? Linda.
Same question about the cuts to USAID. Was Adelante affected, or has they been affected by those cuts, or do they expect to be?
Sarah, maybe you know better, but my impression from talking to Jody at Adelante was that they have not been impacted by the U.S. cuts.
It's private grant funding and like foundation grants that they've gotten in the U.S. Good question.
Yeah. Another way they differ from OEF is that OEF uses a bank and Adelante is its own bank. They have their own funds. I don't think they even take any money from USAID.
No, I don't think so. And they have a sustainable model. They lend out what they have and they return the money, of course, to the pool every year.
Other questions? Aria. Oh, I can't hear you yet.
You're muted.
She's working on it.
Can you unmute
Yeah,
her, Sarah?
yeah. I pressed the wrong button. Sorry. Yeah, are they still using a solidarity model? The group loans?
My understanding is not as much. Is that right, Karen? There's been some shift away from that. They do have more of a variety of loan portfolio, which is something newer for them, like educational or home improvement and whatnot. And we only funds the entrepreneurial business loans.
Yeah, that's the impression I got as well.
Yes. Rosette.
So you mentioned that their goal is to try to reach 1,200 more women with loans. Do you know if they've got the funding for that already? Are they looking for funding for that? Is there a shortfall? What do you have?
That's a really good question, and that's a lot of detail there. I'm going to take a shot at it, and then the rest of the team can jump in. It's my understanding that would be funded by new money, and the money that we would be donating or granting to them this year would be a large part of the basis for those new loans and that growth.
Yes, I know they put in a grant request with us, and you're right. Part of that money will go to expanding their operations. They want to open up a couple of additional locations, hire staff, and expand their loan portfolio.
There's 19 departments in Honduras, and they're only in 5. Plus, they just went into the island of Roatan, which I guess is its own department. So they're in 6 now. But there's definitely a lot of potential for going into these other departments that are quite rural as well.
So to clarify, Sarah, should I infer from that that their grant request is larger than it was previously? Is that?
Yes, a little bit, and we're in the process right now. I think all of our partners would like to see their grants increase, and we would like to see that too. Which is why we're really focusing on fundraising, right, to back up all of these requests and to support them. Our long-term partners have been with us for a number of years, that our funding is really allowing them to grow and expand with the goals of their communities and the women that they're serving. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more too, but I wanted to, I saw Christy, your hand was up as well. Let me take one more question here.
It's a little bit like, follows up a little bit on Ria's too, is I wasn't sure. I know in the past that they did have group meetings and that they'd gone away from that. I didn't know if any of these women were still meeting at all. And once a month or anything as a group in these different locations, or if they're just out there sort of independently on their own.
Team, I didn't hear that they were continuing with those meetings. Did the rest of you hear about that? I know they have a strong relationship with their loan officers, and then they do have some of this training that's provided that they're going to increase. Karen or Nancy?
Yeah, I got the impression that the group meetings were still happening, but at a lower scale.
Okay.
And especially with, during COVID, they weren't able to meet in person. And that's why a lot of their training has gone online too. But also, I think the spread of people, especially in the rural communities, they said it was hard to get together in person. So I got the impression that there still are some groups, but it's less than it used to be. And you're right, Linda, that their loan officer provides them with a great deal of support.
So, but do you know, do they do any leadership work then with these women? In any of?
I think that may be part of the training, the online and to the extent that they have in-person training still, modules within that training.
They're developing apps for their phones because everybody has a phone. Not everybody has a computer, but everybody has a phone. So they're working on developing phone apps for training.
That would provide some connectivity as well.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all so much for being here, for being a part of this presentation. Thank you to the Adelante group for sharing your insights and the photos and the stories about the trip. As we've heard from so many of our partners, and as we've heard from these teams today, the need is out there, and your support, your contributions and donations, and the time that you volunteer is helping to make our work, our mission work possible. We are able to support our partners. Right now, we have 7 grant partners in 6 countries. And our support is really vital. We are in a time of great uncertainty, as we know, and as we've heard from these two teams, and as we've heard from all of our other partners. And the uncertainty is affecting them in different ways. Funding changes, funding losses, policy changes are affecting each partner in a different way, but that uncertainty and the fear is out there. The fear of losing programs, losing staff, losing clients. All of these things are real. And something that we can do is we can be persistent in our funding and our support for our partners. We are in the wonderful position to operate as an independent nonprofit that is not affected by that we can help back up the work that our partners are doing and shore up their programs. The women that we heard about today have these stories of persistence, and we want to join with them in their persistence. Something that really struck me is in these stories, each woman was telling their story of what they want to do next. They all knew what they wanted to do next, moving from just surviving and getting their families by to thriving in their communities and being leaders in their home, being leaders in their communities. They know what they want to do, and they know what they need. They don't need us to provide the power to do that, but they need our support, and our partners need our support to keep them on that trajectory of moving to that thriving place and out of poverty. So as our partners are looking to expand, and all of these women are looking to expand their businesses, achieve their goals, dream big for their families, we want to be there to support them. And as we talked about, we want to be there to meet the increased needs that they all have, our partners have with the grant request. So please consider donating to our grant fund this year, especially if you have not already. But consider what you're able to give. We really appreciate that. And our partners, of course, really appreciate knowing that we're at least a little peace of mind of support that they don't have to worry about, that they know they can count on. And here on the screen, I have a QR code that you can scan with your phone that goes to a donation page, but you can also visit our website, womenempowerment.org, which probably all of you have seen, but for anybody that you may share this presentation with and may not have visited our website, I really encourage you to do so to learn more about our grant partners and upcoming events that we have. We have another site visit that's coming up on May 8th to our partner in Tijuana, Via International. We will be meeting on this side of the border and going across together, led by their staff. Information and signups are on our website. We also have another event that's being hosted by our Julian Giving Circle on Sunday, May 18th. That will be a lovely event up there in Julian. So I invite you to check that out as well and sign up if you haven't already to attend. If you're not already on our newsletter list, please sign up to make sure you're getting our updates. So thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all of our presenters and to everybody who went on these trips. It was at their own expense and on their own time, and really appreciate the work that they're doing in the community to bring our mission to life. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.